Welcome to The Blast Zone, the podcast where we dig up the bombs that shook Hollywood and try to find out why they went up in flames. This week, you wanted to tussle, we tussled. This is Out of Sight. Welcome to The Blast Zone.
Welcome to Blast Zone.
We are not a podcast about bad movies. We are a podcast about movies that did badly.
That's right.
I am Jon Drake, in-house film critic of my Letterboxd account.
And I'm Ian Dukes. I'm a person with thoughts and feelings, and some of them are about movies.
Movies like Out of Sight, which we'll be talking about today. But before we get into that, Ian, how are you doing this week?
Well, over Easter weekend, I had a nice visit to the beautiful Pacific Northwest. Spent some beautiful times with my beautiful uncle and aunt and cousin. We did a lot of eating and taking long walks. And turns out we did those things in the exact perfect balance because I came home weighing the exact same as when I left.
Nice.
And only my soul was fattened up by the experience. Kind of a beautiful trip.
You've always struck me as a Pacific Northwestern kind of guy, although you're a native Angelino.
That's very interesting because I don't think I was for many years, but I do like it. It's gorgeous. I love the pine trees, the water, the coastline. It's very beautiful. Nice place to take long walks.
Speaking of the water, did you happen to indulge in any yearnings, perhaps, that we know about?
I did. I got out on the sea briefly, if you can call that the sea. I think it was the Puget Sound.
Still counts.
Longtime listeners will know that I yearn for the sea,
yes.
And my interactions with it in person are very rare and usually involve me getting the heck out of there as soon as I can because I don't have any tolerance for weather or wind or water or any of that stuff. But a little ferry ride from the Olympic Peninsula to the mainland is just about my speed, and so it was nice. I got to see the water.
Yeah, you'd make a lousy crab fisherman, but you're a great ferry rider.
Oh, God, yes. Yeah, I couldn't hack it.
That's great. I'm glad you enjoyed your trip. We're happy to have you back.
Thank you.
Safe and sound.
How you been?
I've been good, relatively. I was a little concerned before we started recording today because new sandwich place opened up not far from me. It's getting rave reviews, lines out the door. My mother was gracious enough to pick me up one, a 14-inch chicken parm.
Oh, boy.
She was like, so you have half now and then you have half tomorrow. And I said, no, I'm going to have the whole thing now. It was really good, but that was like 3 hours ago. And I thought I'd be fine in time to record. Like I wouldn't have that gross full feeling. It's still there. But talking has helped me get my energy levels back up. I thought I was going to be like napping throughout half of this episode.
Thank goodness. You can use a 14-inch chicken parm sub in lieu of general anesthesia if you needed a surgical procedure. So I'm glad you're even upright.
Or general anesthesia in the fact that if you hit someone in the head with it, they'll just be unconscious.
That's true. You could knock them out.
Weighs roughly 15 pounds. But yeah, delicious sandwich. And a seated Italian hero. Ooh. I call them heroes. Everyone has a different vernacular depending on where they live and grew up.
I can picture it, though.
It was quite delectable. So yeah, that's what I got going on in my life. Big sandwiches, big dreams.
That's very positive.
Yeah, and speaking of big dreams, Jack Foley had a big dream to be a bank robber. I don't know. That was my best attempt at a segue. No, wait. We haven't even done show and tell yet. All right.
Oh, no.
Back that up.
Okay.
Speaking of big dreams, did you dream up any movies to watch?
Well, yeah, kind of. If you remember back in January, we got to cover One Battle After Another, which then went on to win Best Picture, Best Director, Best Supporting Actor for Sean Penn, as I had predicted. So that's how you know that the Blast Zone blessing is real and it works. Please pay attention, Hollywood. But that kind of put me in a PTA mood. So I decided it was time to revisit Licorice Pizza.
Not the actual dish, the movie.
No, if only I could have DoorDash deliver me one. John actually brought Licorice Pizza for show and tell here 4 years ago on our Blue Chips episode.
Oh, wow. You did the homework.
I looked it up because I thought this had happened. To recap, it's a quirky romance. It's got a pair of main characters who are unconventional, but still very relatable. It's hard to find your footing in this movie. At least for me, first time going in, I'm like, oh, it's PTA. He's in the Valley in the 70s, and everything could suddenly go violently sideways. And it does take a few wacky turns, but overall, these characters are not as tragically flawed and doomed as the ones in Boogie Nights. You don't have to hold your breath that the movie's going to become too harsh on you. And on this revisit, I was much more attuned to the movie's vibe, so I enjoyed it even more than I originally did. It maybe feels less weighty, less consequential than some of PTA's other great films, but this is a great little character study, a fun slice of life in the Valley in the 70s, and I really liked it.
Yeah, for a movie that was subject to such discourse as Licorice Pizza, it's a pretty breezy watch. Just more evidence of PTA really excelling at finding new actors or non-actors, then dropping them into his movies, and they're just outperforming your expectations by a lot, because Cooper Hoffman was not really a known commodity at the time. Obviously, he's got great acting in his DNA, but that doesn't always mean what you hope. And then not only Alana Haim, but all the Haim sisters are in that movie.
The whole family. I think the parents are played by the real Haim parents. So he was like, hey, I know this family that lives in the Valley. I'm going to write a movie about them.
Yeah, very unique movie. You mentioned not as as diabolical as Boogie Nights can get at times, but the Bradley Cooper sequence did feel like a bit of a wink to the Alfred Molina scenes in Boogie Nights, just like a wild card that makes you feel uncomfortable and nervous.
Yeah, there's a little danger there, but in the end, it's all funny.
Yeah, a movie I've been toying with the idea of revisiting in the near future. I know I really liked it. I don't know if you went back and listened to my show until I'd be curious to know what I said.
I didn't. I'm curious too.
I was a fan, and I think 4 years is a nice long gap. Blue Chips is pretty early in the show, so
yeah.
I checked out something a little newer. Actually, it was a brand new release when I watched it. Might have been like a day or two since it hit Hulu, which is the only place you could watch it as of now. And it's a little, so Wikipedia describes it as a science fiction action comedy crime film. And it sounds like a lot of things, but it is all those things in equal measure, which is surprising. But it's Mike and Nick and Alice. Have you heard about this movie at all?
Maybe. It sounds like an old movie, but it's not a movie from the 60s with Jack Lemmon.
No, this is a movie from March 14th, 2026.
Wow. Okay.
Starring Vince Vaughn, James Marsden, Aiza Gonzalez, our girl from Ambulance, and Keith David, the patron saint himself. Probably the most appearances of any actor in the Blast Zone so far, showing no signs of slowing down, although this one does not qualify because it's a streaming only release, unfortunately.
Okay.
But directed by Ben David Grabinski, which, as someone who's also way too online, is probably a name you recognize from Twitter.
How do I know Ben David?
He's just out there. He's always posting stuff. I'm pretty sure I brought his directorial debut to Show and Tell when the podcast was very new. He directed a film called Happily that starred Joel McHale and Carrie Bechet. That was another kind of a comedy thriller movie. So that seems to be his wheelhouse, these bloody action movies that don't take themselves very seriously. For example, Vince Vaughn plays two roles in this movie, but they're the same guy at different points in time, although they're in the room together. So there's some time traveling shenanigans. I don't believe that's a spoiler because it's in the trailer. It's a breezy watch, 107 minutes, which might as well be like 82 minutes in 2026 runtimes.
Yeah.
And if you're a James Marsden fan, which I really am, I think you'll get a lot out of this. He gets to be more of a rounded character. Everyone's been watching him in Sonic lately, where he's just a goofball the entire time. Here he's playing a guy with a few different sides. He's a hitman for the mob, but he's trying to get out. He's in love with Aiza Gonzalez because she's Aiza Gonzalez, but she's Vince Vaughn's wife, but they're best friends. It's got some angles to it. It's got a lot more plot than you would expect from a direct-to-streaming movie in this day and age. So it seems like there was a lot of care and thought put into it, which made me warm up to it more than I might have otherwise.
It sounds pretty fun and it sounds pretty original, which I do like when people are weaving sci-fi original stuff.
Yeah, so I would recommend checking it out if that sounds like something you'd enjoy.
I will.
All right, now I'm going to try this again. Speaking of things that you would enjoy, we're talking about Out of Sight this week. How was that?
That was good. And I did enjoy it, so that hit home with me.
Yes. But this was not your first time seeing Out of Sight, was it?
No, I was trying to remember. I watched it when it came out, and I'm not sure if I went to the theater or I just saw it when it first hit home video. And then funnily enough, looking through my notes, apparently I rewatched it in the summer of 2022, and I typed it up to bring it to Show and Tell. But as far as I could see, I never brought it. I just wrote a little blurb about my thoughts on it, so I revisited those now.
You did your homework for this episode way ahead of time. You were prepared.
I'm preparing 3-4 years out at this point.
Smart.
I liked it all those times, but it explained why when I turned it on in the last week or so, I'm like, I really must have seen this more than once because these scenes are really familiar and I know what's going to happen next here and here. But yeah, I like it more than ever after this third, fourth, fifth watch, however many of these added up to.
There's a few movies that I credit with awakening the cinephile inside me, and they're both movies that I saw in the theater way too young.
Okay.
Out of Sight is one of them. My grandmother was a big Elmore Leonard reader and fan.
Neat.
So when this came out, I used to spend the summers with her in Delaware. My mom wanted to get me off the streets of Queens, so she'd ship. And I was trying to remember if this all went down as I remembered. And then I looked at the release date, June 28th. I was like, yep, I would have been in Delaware by that point. I was maybe 11 years old, and it just blew me away. And this movie's not that bad. The other movie I saw way too young was LA Confidential.
Oh.
That's a rougher ride for like an 11-year-old. I had a babysitter take me to the theater to see that one.
Wow.
She was not asked back after that. But I loved both of them. As fucked up and scary as LA Confidential could be for a child, I just was immediately enthralled. And it was years later when I kind of discovered Steven Soderbergh as an entity outside of this movie and how much I just loved all his movies. And he went on to become my favorite director. And this is my favorite movie by him. It's not my favorite movie overall, but I feel like that's still a pretty important spot on a list of your favorite movies, your favorite movie by your favorite director.
Yeah, he's really in top form here. I'm sure in this episode, we'll talk more about his history, but he really nailed it here. It's so surprising, like the way things came together with the cast, with Soderbergh, with this story. It seems like such a success story, except it didn't make money.
Right.
It's kind of stupid.
And that's what everyone from the cast and crew had to say about it after the fact, is they all loved it, but it just didn't connect with audiences at the time, which, many such cases. That's our bread and butter here on this podcast, is called classics. And this certainly falls into that category. But we'd be remiss if we did not mention the unfortunate news that Mr. Soderbergh is fully AI pilled.
Is that true? I'm not saying that it's a false rumor.
It's a direct quote from him. Yeah, he's using, quote, a lot of generative AI in his 2 upcoming movies.
Shit, it's 2 movies. I only heard about the one, and I did hear him defending it, saying it takes a lot of skill to get the output right. I'm like, oh boy.
That's the same talking point that every fucking AI bro uses. Like, we gotta know how to prompt it.
I know. That made me feel worse. I thought he was going to have at least a better excuse or explanation of why he needed to do it.
Yeah, some self-awareness. Like, movies are expensive to make, and none of my movies make any money. So this is the only way I can make the things with the ambition and the scope that I want.
Exactly.
I wouldn't like that, but I'd respect it a little more.
Yeah, I excused him better than he would too, because he makes a lot of movies and his priority is just making a movie by any means necessary. He's made all kinds of movies, all kinds of weird ways, and it's always fast and cheap and move on to the next one. And it's like, okay, I get why he's the filmmaker who decided to try this, but I don't know. He also, throughout all that, has maintained a reputation as like an artist, right? Like he's
a steward of filmmaking in a sense.
Yeah, he cares about cinema, and this seems like a slap in the face.
I mean, they gave him the Oscars for a year. Like, he was the director of the Oscars for a year.
Oh, I forgot about that.
And now he's championing this technology that's threatening to put all these people out of business. It's a real bummer. So the movies that he's using it in, he's got a John Lennon and Yoko Ono documentary that he says uses about 10 minutes of generative AI in it. I'm not sure to what end. But the real bummer is he's making a Spanish Civil War movie with Wagner Moura, and that's going to use, quote, a lot of generative AI, which that's a movie I'd be in the theater day one for. And now I'm just like, I guess I'll always have his back catalog to enjoy.
Gosh. Yeah, I see where documentarians have been tempted. They're among the first people who have been tempted because they're like, there's all these documentaries where they have written diaries of famous people.
Bourdain was the first big one, yeah.
Yeah, so then they're like, oh, what if you just heard it in their voice? That's not lying, is it? And then people are like,
it's not telling the truth either, though.
Yeah.
It's dicey. It's dicey.
It's evoking something, but to just do it in a period piece to like save on sets or what? Like, what's the excuse there, Steve-O?
He's always been kind of on the cutting edge of technology. As we know, like he did a lot of filming on iPhones when that was a novel idea that nobody, at least in the mainstream, had really tackled. Like you said, it's not surprising that he's the one to kind of embrace a new technology. It's just that this new technology is threatening to ruin filmmaking and also the world, deplete our natural resources and our drinking water. So that's not cool.
It makes you ask the big question, does Steven Soderbergh not have friends? Is there no one who went, hey, Steve, have you heard what people are saying about this stuff?
I don't know. Have you ever seen his media diaries where he like catalogs everything he's read and watched and kind of taken in over the year?
No, I haven't seen that.
They're like hundreds of pages long. So I don't know how you can consume that much media and work as much as he does and have a social life. So maybe you're onto something there.
Yeah, maybe he doesn't have anybody to talk to.
We're talking to you, Steven. We love you. Please reconsider. But if not, we have literally dozens of your movies we could talk about on this podcast because they don't make any money.
That's true. He makes a lot of them. But yes, that being said, we're going to just move on and talk about how amazing he was making Out of Sight because it kicks ass.
Yeah, I felt like we would be intellectually dishonest if we didn't bring it up at least, but we don't have to harp on it. We can focus on Out of Sight. So do you want to hear about the making of this movie?
Yeah, for sure. Let's hear how this thing happened.
Steven Soderbergh burst onto the scene with 1989's art house classic, Sex, Lies, and Videotape, which transcended its indie status to make over $30 million on its $1.2 million budget. His next 5 movies, in order, would be Kafka, King of the Hill, The Underneath, Schizopolis, and Grey's Anatomy, and while many were critical darlings, their financial performances ranged from disappointing to catastrophic.
He always did have range.
Eager to climb his way out of what he called the art house ghetto, Soderbergh passed on the Charlie Kaufman scripted Human Nature to make Out of Sight, a bouncy and relatively lighthearted heist romance adapted from an Elmore Leonard novel by Scott Frank. George Clooney was also looking to transcend his beginnings, hoping to shed his TV star reputation and gain traction as a leading man in movies. While a fan favorite and heartthrob on ER, Clooney had struggled in the movie business, impressing in low-budget gonzo fare like From Dusk Till Dawn, but disappointing in his more mainstream attempts like The Peacemaker and Batman and Robin.
Even the Batsuits had disappointing nipples.
He signed onto the movie in the lead role of oft-incarcerated bank robber Jack Foley, later reflecting that, quote, Out of Sight was the first time where I had a say, and it was the first good screenplay that I'd ever read where I just went, that's it. Sandra Bullock was given strong consideration for the character of Karen Sisko, but Soderbergh thought their chemistry, while significant, was not the right flavor for this story. Jennifer Lopez was a relatively new name to Hollywood, but had built up some momentum with Selena and Anaconda both being hits in 1997.
Audiences did want some because she got buns, hon.
She signed on to the film and the 2 leads were set. An absolute murderer's row of supporting and character actors like Ving Rhames, Albert Brooks, Don Cheadle, Viola Davis, Catherine Keener, Luis Guzman, Steve Zahn, Isaiah Washington, Dennis Farina, and an uncredited Michael Keaton rounded out the cast,
How many Batmans are in this movie?
and they were ready to get shooting. With a budget of $48 million secured, Soderbergh's highest by a good margin, filming was set to begin and the production was sprawling. Filming took place in Los Angeles, Miami, Detroit, and Louisiana, lending each locale a sense of authenticity. A release date of June 26, 1998 was set, and early reviews were extremely strong. The movie currently holds a 94% Rotten Tomatoes score, indicating overwhelmingly positive critical consensus. The film's financial prospects, however, were less positive. Out of Sight opened in fourth place with $12 million, losing to new release Dr. Dolittle and the second weekends of Mulan and The X-Files Fight the Future, respectively. The movie dropped 45% in its second week, a respectable drop by today's standards, but steep for 1998, as Armageddon debuted with $36 million. Steady drops in the 40 to 50% range persisted in the following weeks, and the movie would eventually leave theaters with only $77.7 million worldwide.
It took that money in hundreds and fifties and nothing off the bottom of the drawer.
The movie's reputation has only grown in the years since, now considered a standout in the careers of Soderbergh, Clooney, and Lopez. Clooney later said, quote, "Even though it didn't really do well box office-wise, we sort of tanked again. It was a really good film." Lopez also remembers the film fondly, adding, "It kind of became a cult classic. It didn't get as much notice when it first came out at the box office, but now, years later, so many people told me it's their favorite film. It's crazy." That's not crazy, J-Lo. That just means some people have good taste.
That's right. You're not crazy, Jennifer.
Hold on. I didn't say that. I said that particular thing is not. She might be a little crazy.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. I've heard stories.
Keep getting back together with Ben. Crazy for that guy, at least.
I mean, who among us, right?
But it's heartening to see that it didn't bomb. It made half again its budget, so it didn't get to that 2x. So, like, it didn't just fall on its face. It made a decent total sum of millions. It just wasn't enough millions to get into the black. And I imagine that, as we do not do, if you were to take into account home video, this movie feels like one that probably caught fire once it got to rentals.
Yeah, the financials of home video, home streaming, whatever, are so nebulous that it's impossible to factor it in. But certainly I think people would be surprised to learn that this was a disappointment at the box office, given its cast, its standing, its reputation, its reviews. It feels like a hit movie. But it's also the kind of movie that, this is the movie we started this podcast for in some sense, because it's really good. It's not a huge hit. It's not a huge failure. So you're not going to get it on bad movie podcasts, but you're also not going to get it on the podcast that only cover the biggest hits of all time. It's kind of in the middle.
Yeah.
And it gives us a great opportunity to dissect a movie that's maybe a little underexplored.
Yeah, it's really interesting too, as you pointed out here, both Clooney and J-Lo, they were known quantities, but their stars were just catching fire as far as headlining movies. And that's why, again, it seems so crazy that this didn't just explode, because they just kill it. They're both so good in this. They make such an impression. You're like, oh, that's perfect casting. Those are total movie stars.
Perfect casting across the board, pretty much.
Yeah.
Even the bit parts are like, they nail it. You heard those names I listed during the synopsis. Viola Davis is in this movie for like 3 minutes, which is nuts. Michael Keaton's in this movie for a cameo, essentially.
He's kind of a stunt casting though, right? Because he's playing a character he played elsewhere.
Yeah, so he's playing Ray Nicolette, who's with the FBI. I think he was with the DEA previously, because I'm pretty sure in the movie Jackie Brown, where he had a bigger part as Ray Nicolette, he was a DEA agent. There's a lot of inter-universe shenanigans going on with this movie that we'll have to discuss. Some of the actors, some of the characters as well, and who else might have played them at times.
It's really interesting, the footprint that Elmore Leonard has left on Hollywood. So many of his properties have been translated into movies and shows, and he formed this larger network within his fictional world, and that same crossover tends to happen.
Yeah, for the listeners who aren't familiar, Jackie Brown, the Quentin Tarantino movie, is based on the Elmore Leonard novel Rum Punch, because they don't have the same name. It's easy to forget that sometimes.
There's a whole secret world going on in Hollywood where all these characters connect.
But you understand why Elmore Leonard is such like a rich vein for filmmakers. Like, his novels have a cinematic quality. Like, Get Shorty was a hit a couple years before this too, another Elmore Leonard adaptation. There's a Hollywood kind of aesthetic to his writing. Not aesthetic, but like a style.
Yeah.
He writes dialogue in such a snappy way that it just translates to the screen word for word so perfectly.
Yeah, people will read that stuff and want to put it on screen. But you called this movie bouncy in your monologue, and yet there's a through line to Jackie Brown, which I would not call fun and bouncy bouncy at all. So when you're talking about movies that youngsters should not be taken to, Out of Sight, despite being another Elmore Leonard adaptation, is much safer for a kid than Jackie Brown when Tarantino went in a Tarantino direction and made that one pretty dark in places. And there's a little bit of darkness in Out of Sight, but overall Soderbergh brings a pretty lighthearted mood, and we'll point out where things do go dark and where he successfully kept it breezy.
Yeah, Soderbergh's certainly not a stranger to the dark corners of the human mind. Like he can get gnarly on film as well, but Tarantino seems to revel in it a little more. They almost feel like two filmmakers adapting the same source material, even though they're not the same story, you know, same writer, similar setting, big cast, crime heist type of deal. It'd be a fun double feature to see how the two handled it back to back. Yeah,
it's a fun examination into each of their personalities, and I just love the flavor that Soderbergh gave this movie. Although I respect Tarantino and I've certainly enjoyed a lot of his movies, this jives more with kind of what I want. Something that's got some danger, some excitement, some thrills, and a lot of comedy, and just like a good heart to the movie overall.
Do you want to get into the story of Out of Sight? Because it is a serpentine tale.
Yes, there's lots to tell. Let's jump right in. Jack Foley, played by George Clooney, is a crafty criminal who's robbed hundreds of banks in his career without ever using a gun. Foley's been in prison a few times, including his current stint in Florida's Glades Correctional Institution, but he always gets out and goes back to a life of crime. When a fellow prisoner named Chino, played by Luis Guzman, digs a tunnel, Foley piggybacks on the escape to break out himself, posing as a prison guard to evade capture and to meet his old friend Buddy, played by Ving Rhames, in the parking lot. Also in that lot, on unrelated business, is U.S. Marshal Karen Cisco, played by Jennifer Lopez, a capable agent with a history of dating shitty guys. When Karen sees the escape going down, she tries to apprehend Foley, but Buddy gets the jump on her, shoves her and Jack into the car's trunk together, and speeds away. Packed tightly together on the drive, Jack and Karen engage in contentious banter that improbably becomes a little bit romantically charged. Halfway to Miami, Buddy pulls over to transfer to a second getaway car, this one stolen by another old prison compatriot named Glenn, played by Steve Zahn, who Foley doesn't trust. Already infatuated with Karen, Foley insists on bringing her with them in the second car. But while Jack and Buddy argue on the side of the road, Karen tells Glenn this whole plan was a bad idea and convinces them to drive off without the guys. Later, as Karen tries to get Glenn to pull over and turn himself in, he crashes the car and flees into the night. As Karen recovers in Miami, she and Foley continue to think about each other, and Jack even places a risky call to Karen's house to resume their conversation. Later, as Karen tracks down Foley's ex and apprehends the fugitive Chino, she starts to get an idea of just what Jack is up to. During a prior stint in the federal prison in Lompoc, California, Jack befriended a wealthy white-collar criminal named Richard Ripley, played by Albert Brooks. Foley even protected Ripley from a predatory inmate named Maurice Snoopy Miller, played by Don Cheadle. But now that Foley's free, he intends to make his way to Ripley's suburban Detroit home and steal the uncut diamonds that Ripley once told Glenn he keeps stashed there. Meanwhile, the FBI has allowed Karen to join their fugitive task force, but they tell her to stay put and sit in the lobby as they head upstairs to raid Foley's hotel room. So she's in the perfect position to spot Foley as he passes through, headed the opposite way. Jack gives Karen a little wave, and she simply does nothing, allowing Foley and Buddy to slip by and head out of town.
Quite a bit happening in this first act. I feel like we say that about most movies, that this one is really jam-packed, but it starts in an interesting note. We're not really sure where in time we are. It doesn't quite become clear until a little bit later when this happens, but this opening bank robbery I thought was really well done, because when somebody is kind of as handsome and charismatic as George Clooney, the cheap way is to just play him as like charismatic and suave, which of course he is, but also like overly competent. And he's never been afraid, to his credit, to kind of undercut that and be a bit of a fuck up at the same time.
And this scene takes you through all that. It's really good. I listened to an interview that Scott Frank, the writer of the screenplay, gave at the Austin Film Festival several years back. And he talks about how much he loves character and he thinks you should use action to establish character. And this scene is exactly one of those where you dive right in. It's not a day in the life. It's like pivotal moment in this guy's life. You don't even realize how big a role it plays, connecting his past and his future until later. But he just goes in and he charms you, and then he comes out and he gets into this dinky little fucked up,
it's like a Pinto
Honda Civic.
Oh, even better.
That won't start. And it's just embarrassing. And you're right. Clooney's good at being a dope. He runs that swing so nicely from where he's really suave and cool as the handsome guy who's both frightening and charming, the cute bank teller, to being a total loser who's going back to jail.
I did like the cops line right when they pull up on him. I think you flooded it. It's just good writing, but no cop could be that clever.
No, that was the unlikely part.
Well, I guess that scene covers my thoughts about Clooney as Foley as a whole, really. Like, he's got this facade of this dangerous, suave, sexy criminal. But, you know, you find out in the trunk scene with Karen that he's been in prison more than half his life. So it's not like he's some kind of mastermind who's always a step ahead. He's maybe a little bit better than the average guy, but not the best in the game.
Yeah, it goes pretty quickly into the trunk scene, which is another one of the iconic scenes of the movie. It's a meet cute from a rom-com. rom-com, except it's happening bathed in the red taillights as they're squished together in the trunk of her car.
And we know she's got a gun because her dad gave her a gun for her birthday, I think.
Yeah, I think it might have been that. Her scene with her dad kind of introduces who she is, what kind of family they are. That gives you a lot of really cool background. And then, yeah, it's really improbable. If they both weren't so good and the script wasn't solid, the movie would fall apart in the trunk scene, right? Because this guy stinks. I mean, they talk constantly about how badly he stinks because he crawled through this fucking sewage pipe tunnel out of the prison and he's covered head to toe in grime and mud, pressed up against her. He's touching her thigh, which that alone could be a deal breaker. And yet he's charming, but not in the super slick way, kind of in a goofy way. He's like a little bit overly excited talking about the movies he's into.
I did like where he asks her, like, oh, what's in this canister? She says, it's for your breath. You could use some. Spray some in your mouth. Goes, oh, that's mace. Well,
yeah.
You almost believe, though, that this guy might try it. He's a bit of a dope.
It's funny, and I was with him the whole time, but you could easily imagine a version of this where you go, oh, come on. She's never going to start feeling attracted to this guy in this situation, but somehow it works.
And I think that's where Ving Rhames' buddy is so important to the movie, too, because he's that voice throughout of like, really, dude, you think that's how it's going to go down? She's going to forget that you're a criminal on the run and just fall in love with you. But that's exactly what happens. But Buddy, in that sense, is almost the audience surrogate, calling out the absurdity of it all, but also giving it permission to proceed.
I agree. That's a good point. And actually, Karen, despite several scenes where her character is defined as very competent, her dad does remind her of just how shitty she is at picking men. Like, she literally dated another bank robber. Doesn't he say that?
Yeah, she didn't know that one was a bank robber at the time, as far as we know. But yet she did date a bank robber, and she's currently dating a married man, Ray Nicolette.
She says, remember how that one ended, Dad? I shot him. So she's
getting quite a track record.
She's trying to do better.
Yeah, we'll revisit that later. Karen Sisco, and another iconic Elmore Leonard character. She's appeared in many novels of his.
Oh, cool.
But also, there was a show called Karen Sisco that ran for one season, I think on Fox, and she was played by Carla Gugino. It was a good show. I like that show.
I think I checked it out too. I think I liked it. Another good casting for this character.
Yeah, I do agree that Sandra Bullock is not right for the character, so good call, whoever was doing the casting. But Carla Gugino actually played Karen Sisco in another show. Did you know this?
No.
But due to rights issues, they did not have the rights to the character Karen Sisco. They had a throwaway line that she had briefly been married, so they called her Karen Goodall.
Oh.
But it was Carla Gugino in a little show I like to call Justified. And that's our Justified crossover of the week.
Justified crossover of the week.
Oh, damn. I did not know that. Didn't see that one coming.
First time we've had a character crossover and not a actor crossover. There are actually no actor crossovers, which seems surprising.
Surprising.
Steve Zahn should have been on Justified for a minute.
He totally should have.
Speaking of Steve Zahn, Glenn Matthews, I didn't realize how much this character set the tone of Steve Zahn's career because he was a face you might recognize before this, but he'd been in stuff like Crimson Tide, not really what you'd expect from a Steve Zahn, and That Thing You Do, where he was just like a hokey 50s guy. So that kind of like burnout, jokester, fuck up character that Steve's like that he played in Joyride, which we covered not that long ago.
Right.
This is kind of the movie where he developed that, I think, as his like on-screen persona that he keeps going back to.
Well, if that's true, then he came out of the gate fucking guns blazing because his
so
character is so good because it transcends that, right? You think of that as, oh, okay, that's a stereotypical character and it's for lighthearted movies, but we'll get to it later. Steve Zahn carries both some of the goofiest comedy and the most intense drama in this movie, and he makes all of it work fantastically well.
Excellent dramatic actor and excellent comedic actor. Truly one of my guys. And he fucking rocks as Glenn Matthews.
Yeah.
And his fucking sunglasses. Another great line. Tell Glenn if I see him wearing his sunglasses, I'm going to step on him, and I might not even take him off his face first.
Yeah. Foley loves that gag because then when he sees him, he says, I'm going to throw your glasses over the bridge while you're still wearing them.
Nothing gets Foley riled up like Glenn's sunglasses in this movie. You can't stand them.
It's all the characters. I don't know how much Scott Frank added and how much came out of Elmore Leonard, but all these characters have little quirks. They have their little physical things. They have their stuff they're into that makes them sort of novelistic. Like you recognize that as feeling like novelty stuff, but it really works in the movie setting to just make all these people special and unique.
Absolutely. And speaking of special and unique, there's some filmmaking tricks deployed in this movie that feel maybe ahead of the curve. This was pre-Memento, post-Pulp Fiction, so I guess that kind of disjointed structure had already been done, and Pulp Fiction might as well be an Elmore Leonard adaptation, even though it's not.
Yeah.
It's certainly got a heavy influence from him, but there's a bit of time dilation in this movie. Stuff doesn't happen exactly in order. It jumps around a bit.
Yeah, starting with what you hinted about, the opening scene, we see Foley come out of one building and he's all pissed for reasons we don't understand. And that's when he, on impulse, decides to soothe himself by robbing a bank and gets himself sent back to jail. And it's only late in the movie that we find out that that was related to everything else in the movie. And to be honest, I have to fess up. Having seen this movie multiple times, on my first rewatch in the last week, I got confused again. I was like, they show two different different prison stints, one where one set of stuff happens. There's the Florida prison, there's the California prison, and they're not trying to fool you. They name the prisons. They put a title on the screen that says 2 years ago, and they're wearing different color jumpsuits. But still, I was like being a lazy watcher the first time. I was like, what the heck? How's that guy both out of prison and in prison right now? And none of it's contradictory. It all makes sense once you pay attention.
That's just funny that your first thought was like, is there multiple timelines happening here? Like, are we in another?
Multiverse.
Yeah, are we in the multiverse right now?
This is the Albert Brooks multiverse where he's both bald and wearing a toupee at the same time in 2 different states.
That did throw me off. I was like, this must be pre everything because he's got his hair. Nope.
You have to pay attention a little, but we like that about Soderbergh movies. We like that about twisty crime thrillers in general. It's the ones that skate just the right degree of difficulty where it's like, oop, it's a little hard to catch up. I hope I'm getting it. And then it all clicks in the end. That's a very satisfying thing about this genre.
Yeah, and this movie is kind of a perfect distillation of that because it's also so enjoyable on its face that kind of the twistiness of it is not the point. It's more of just a bonus.
Yes, it's not essential. And we talked about Soderbergh's Black Bag on here, which he put out. Was that just last year?
Yeah, I think you're right.
That one was like really hard to stay on top. I mean, that was like a serious hardcore spy thriller. It was a guy unwinding the most knotted mess of intrigue. So this one is not nearly on that level. This is the light breezy version of it.
Yeah, maybe we'll cover that one day. Maybe we'll just cover Soderbergh movies until he disavows AI.
Keep humiliating him with his past successes.
Keep hammering him. All right, so now we're talking about Albert Brooks being both in and out of prison. Let's talk about Albert Brooks as Richard Ripley, playing kind of like a Wall Street sleazebag, finance, shady dealer type of dude. Basically a Ponzi scheme is what I gathered, what he did.
It's something like that. They call him the Ripper because he ripped off so many people.
And his name's Ripley, so, you know, bonus points for alliteration.
But even after his stint in Lompoc, he's still got his name on that building. It says Ripley Enterprises when Clooney goes there.
Yeah, he's still got a big fucking house in Detroit, or probably not in Detroit, just outside.
Yeah, what did they say? Bloomfield Hills?
Yeah.
Brooks just brings gravitas. It's a funny kind of gravitas, but whenever I see him in a movie playing a character, anything like this, I believe he's a guy in the world who's like, oh, that's just what older guys get like when they have money or power or age and wisdom to wield over younger characters. And he's just a delight in this. I love him.
And he's put upon and he's preyed upon, but the movie doesn't really make a joke out of him for that. He is weaker than certainly Maurice and the guys he finds himself locked up with. But I don't know, the movie doesn't diminish him for that. Obviously, it has some things to say about how he earned his fortune. The cheap way out would have been to make him just a complete fucking dope that gets beaten up or worse in prison, but he's just like financially taken advantage of, which again goes to that thing like it's dark, but it's not that dark. It doesn't go all the way.
It's not Shawshank dark. He's getting taken advantage of, but it's also like nuance. It does feel like he's a character that kind of bounces back and forth. You're like, oh, is he a victim? Is he a swindler of his own kind? Is he disingenuous? For actually a pretty small role that doesn't have that much screen time or that many lines, I like how subtle this character is.
Another character from the first act that I absolutely adore, one of my favorite performances by this actor who, again, I adore, is Don Cheadle as Maurice Miller.
Oh my
gosh.
Is
just, he gets some of the classic lines of all time in this movie. He brings a lot of menace to this role. We see him stab a man to death in the first act, but he just seems like a fun guy to be around at times too. I can't explain, because it's Don Cheadle. I'm sure that's part of it, but they don't make him just an out and out monster. They give him not redeeming qualities, but like an easy way about him most of the time.
He's so good at gliding between easy and like shivving you easy. Like Don Cheadle's at the top of his game in this. The character's super fun. And he's not really one of the smaller characters. He is the villain in this movie.
Yeah, he's the main antagonist for sure.
And thank goodness. I guess we'll come around to it at the end. If this was sort of a come up for Clooney and J-Lo, I'd be interested to talk about what Don Cheadle did before and after this, because this feels like this is a career-making performance.
This is a big moment for him. I did include him in my career retrospective of the actors involved. But I think maybe Devil in a Blue Dress was a couple years before this, and that might have been a big deal too, because he's so good as Mouse in Devil in a Blue Dress. He steals the movie from Denzel, and he steals this movie from Clooney at times. He's a powerful actor. And if you wouldn't mind, I wanted to recite some of my favorite lines from the prison showdown between Foley and Ripley v. Miller, and I don't remember his accomplice's name.
Yeah.
When he threatens to hurt Ripley if he doesn't pay him, and Foley reminds him that if you kill him, you're not going to get any money from him. And he says, the man doesn't have to die. He could fall down on something real hard, like a shiv or my dick. Just Perfect line delivery, but Clooney gives it as good as he gets in this scene too, though, when he tells him that his friend is ranked 32 in the federal penitentiary system. He says, oh yeah? Out of what, 20? And then Foley kicks that guy's ass.
He does. And it's funny because, we've taught that Foley is a guy who's robbed a ton of banks, but he's never ever used a gun. He's not a man of violence. He's a man who uses his wits, but he never backs down from the very scary Maurice Miller in several confrontations. And then you're right. I forgot that he actually wins a physical fight in this part of the movie with a huge
book.
ranked prison boxer, beats him up with a dictionary or something.
Very impressive work. So yeah, just this first act is crackling. We're meeting all these characters, and I feel like they go out of their way to give each of these characters a signature moment or line so that they really stick in our minds for when they come back a little later.
Yeah.
Which is just good writing, good filmmaking. And then let's run down some of the smaller roles because they're not played by small actors.
No.
The great Dennis Farina as Karen's dad. He's playing Marshall Sisko, who I believe has his own run of Elmore Leonard stories as well, or at least appears in some. We've got Luis Guzman. This might have been a relatively early Guzman role. I don't know if he was really a name yet. He's Chino, one of the escapees, a mostly comedic role, but he's pretty great in it.
Yeah.
Even Catherine Keener as Clooney's ex-wife, Adele DeLisi, who has a showdown with Chino. She's fantastic in her small part, playing like a ditzy but well-meaning magician's assistant.
She brings dignity to that because it sounds like a character that you would laugh at and sneer at, an out-of-work magician's assistant. But she plays it in a way that's sassy and sexy and dignified somehow.
And this was well before her kind of big breakout, which I guess would be the 40-year-old virgin.
Oh, right.
And then we've also got Michael Keaton as Ray Nicolette. This is where he meets Karen's dad in this section?
Yeah, this is where he comes over. She's recuperating at home and the dad is watching over her.
He plays him like a real himbo.
It's just, he hardly says anything, but of course that's perfect for Michael Keaton roles because he's just acting with his eyebrows for most of the scene and just giving like reaction faces to things that Dennis Farina is saying, and it's great.
He's got a big t-shirt on that says FBI, and Farina says, do you ever wear one that says undercover? And it's just clear from his facial reaction, he has no idea what he's getting at.
He does not get the joke. He just stares at him for like 5 seconds and goes, no.
It was like, he's like smacking a piece of gum around his mouth too, I think.
It's great. It's classic Keaton stuff. It's a lot of fun. And it's just, that's pure candy, right? Because this character is just there to teach us something about Karen Sisko. He doesn't change the plot.
She's not attracted to the right kind of guy. Yeah, she's got poor taste in men. But I'm glad they did it. And just the connection to Jackie Brown, like you said, it's candy. It's a cherry on top of all the other actually good, thematically important stuff we're getting.
Yeah, it just makes it that much more fun.
Speaking of more fun, do you want to move on to Act 2 where more fun things happen?
Yeah, let's see what kind of fun Foley and Buddy get into.
Although Glenn may have parted ways with Foley and Buddy on a Florida highway, he didn't forget about the Ripley diamond heist they'd been planning. Glenn continues on to Detroit and looks for assistance from their old prison acquaintance Maurice, aka Snoop, to complete the job without them. Snoop immediately takes over the heist as his own, bringing in his driver, White Boy Bob, and his wife's brother Kenneth, played by Isaiah Washington as Muscle. Then Snoop demands that Glenn needs to prove his toughness to even stay involved with the job. He forces Glenn to ride along and pull the trigger as Snoop and his boys murder and dismember a rival drug dealer. Then Foley arrives in town and confronts Snoop for butting in on the Ripley heist. They all agree to meet Friday night at a local boxing event and work out an arrangement. In the meantime, knowing that Karen would follow him to Detroit, Jack tracks her down at her hotel bar. Foley approaches Karen and the romantic tension builds as they share a drink. Then they go back to Karen's room and consummate their budding romance. But they both know it's an impossible relationship, and when Karen wakes in the morning, Foley is gone. Friday night comes and the traumatized Glenn is freaking out, knowing that Snoop intends to kill Foley rather than share the loot. Glenn excuses himself to pee, then flees the venue, only to be caught by Karen Sisko in the parking lot. Glenn spills all the details on Snoop and Foley and the heist, and Karen tells him he's free to keep running and save himself. So he does. When Foley and Buddy arrive, Snoop tells them the plan has been moved up, and they're all going to leave together to rob Ripley right now. As the 5 criminals pull up to Ripley's mansion in a plumber's van, Karen trails silently behind them. Watching Foley and the others force their way into the house, she calls her friend on the Detroit PD and says she's going to need backup.
This act starts with a dark turn. This is the only place where the movie really turned my stomach and made me feel bad.
The persecution of Glenn Matthews, we could call it. He's going through it in a big way. And also there's the small detail that the rival drug dealer is trans that just adds a kind of hint to what's going on here. Because the brutality of the rival drug dealers getting shot, killed, whatever, is not a novel idea. But the kind of brutality that they exercise here is a bit much. I mean, we don't see anything, to be clear. If you're scared about watching this movie and you're squeamish for gore, not all of it's it's off screen, but sometimes that lets your imagination do more of the work, and that's worse.
Yeah, it's really well portrayed on screen by Soderbergh to the extent where, like, I wrote in this synopsis here that he makes Glenn pull the trigger, but are we sure that Glenn pulled the trigger? Like, it seemed like it. What did you think? Was he the one firing those shots?
Hard to say, yeah. It's left up to interpretation. I assume he did just because of how utterly, like, broken he is at the end of it all.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a guy who's a career criminal, but we have no indication that he's a violent criminal. He just seems like a fuck up. So this level of violence is probably something he's never witnessed. So I guess it could be just from being a standby, but I got the impression that's why he's so shell-shocked afterwards.
Yeah, they jumped him into the gang in a really stomach-churning kind of way. And you see it on Steve Zahn's face. Like we were alluding to, he really plays basically the harshest emotional moment in the movie. Really, like, I felt terrible for this guy. And that whole scene is like this one long sequence where it starts off where, like, oh, the dumb, annoying Glenn character is getting his comeuppance because he got into business with the ruthless Snoopy, and now Snoop's sort of laughing at him, taking his car, taking his heist from him, and you feel worse and worse, and then you just feel like shit, just like Glenn does, because they not only shot this drug dealer, but they like chopped her up into pieces with a hatchet and a hacksaw.
There was all those tools were used. I'm not sure to what degree. I think we see a mostly intact body when the cops are there, so I don't know if maybe they just hacked away but didn't quite dismember the body.
Oh yeah, that sort of doesn't jive, because they do show later there's a crime scene moment where Karen meets her other friend Ray.
Raymond Cruz, who's a big time Elmore Leonard character. He's the protagonist of maybe his most famous novel, City Primeval.
Yes.
And he's played by Paul Calderone, who actually reprised that role in a show called Justified City Primeval. And that's our second Justified crossover of the week.
Oh, you slipped the second one in.
Justified crossover of the week.
Boom, tricked you. City Primeval I usually don't include.
Right.
But this is the same actor and same character. That's too good to pass up.
That's a real heavy crossover. You can't ignore that.
We'd be remiss.
Yeah, so it's kind of artistically done, because as this sort of slow-mo violence is going on screen, it fades to black with...
And they're spray painting like hate speech across the house.
Yeah, is it hate messages? So he's spray painting the camera, and that's how it fades to black. But you don't know what he's writing on the walls. Is it a message to the other drug dealers? Is it something hateful? Is it just something gross that Snoop wanted to spray on a wall?
Who knows with Snoop?
But I just wanted to mention how when Soderbergh decides to make violence disturbing, it's very disturbing. And when he decides to make it lighthearted, it's somehow lighthearted. Early on in the movie, when Foley's escaping the prison, there's guys popping out of a hole, and they're being gunned down wholesale by prison guards with machine guns. And they're just like dying brutally in your face. And that's somehow almost comical.
Yeah, that scene reminded me of the prison riot in Logan Lucky, which is also like a pretty fucked up, dangerous event that is played mostly for laughs. And not in like a way where you feel it pulling against itself. Like, it works and you don't question it.
Yeah, it's a testament to Soderbergh's skill at just sculpting each of those the way he wanted them to come across.
So after Karen manages to convince Raymond Cruz to give her Maurice's address, she goes to the house.
Right.
We get another classic scene. The movie's just chock full of them. She meets Moselle Miller, Maurice's wife and sister of Kenneth, who's the Isaiah Washington character. She seems put upon by the men in her life. She says she hasn't seen Maurice in a long time, and you certainly believe her, but she's stuck living with Kenneth, who basically treats her like a maid or a servant of sorts.
He's a dick.
You do feel for her. And that's a real early Viola Davis role, and you could just tell she's got something already.
Yeah.
Kills it.
It's funny because I was like, why is this scene in here? It's not that consequential as a plot scene, but it's another case where Scott Frank is like, I need to do character moments for everybody. And like, he's done plenty of them for Karen. We've talked about how she's introduced, how much work the trunk scene does, et cetera, et cetera. And this is more than halfway through the movie. This is still a defining character moment for Karen.
And Kenneth.
Powerhouse moment from Isaiah Washington as Kenneth, as he menaces her and threatens to basically rape her for coming into his house. And she handles him. And that turns into like a trailer moment. That's the "you wanted to tussle, we tussled." That's the quote that you referenced at the top of the show.
She hits him in the eye with a collapsible baton, which is extra wild because he mentions that he's had his retina detached a few times.
Oh,
which is why he's no longer a boxer. And she hits him in the eye, which I thought was a nice touch.
Oh, she went right at that shit. I didn't even catch that. She's more ruthless than I knew.
Yeah, and it also sets up the capacity that the Kenneth character has for sexual violence, which factors into the final act of the movie in some degree.
That's true.
Again, that sounds worse than it is. Like, it's played for laughs in that part too, to some extent, but then it gets serious and it's no longer funny. But Isaiah Washington, I'm like, watching this movie, it just bums me out that he couldn't get out of his own way, because he's making like Angel Studios shit now. He's doing like God's Not Dead 4 or whatever.
Yeah, we talked about that.
And he's so fucking good in this. We talked about it off mic. He's so good in this role. Not a huge role, but every time he's on screen, he shines.
Yeah, he got fired from a network show. Was that Grey's Anatomy that he was on?
Grey's Anatomy. He made some homophobic slurs about his co-star.
And that did it in for him. Like
he got a few chances after that, and he never really found a foothold in anything long term. So I have to imagine maybe his character just doesn't, people don't enjoy being around him so much.
Allegedly.
But great actor.
He's super scary. He's playing a super gross dude in this, and he's playing him really frightening. We're not insinuating that as an actor or as a human being, he's as bad as Kenneth, but yeah, it's an excellent performance.
No, I mean, by far his most famous role is like one of the best cardiovascular surgeons in the world on Grey's Anatomy. So he's certainly not typecast as like a thug, but he plays both parts very convincingly. He's just a good actor. But yeah, this tells us a lot about Karen too. Certainly, like we had no sense that she was a shrinking violet or anything, but maybe we didn't realize how willing she is to throw down until down.
Yeah.
With a dude who's twice her size and a trained fighter.
It's a fun scene. When she says we tussled and she closes the collapsible baton on the wall as she steps out, it's badass.
She gets a freeze frame too, doesn't she?
Yeah, we didn't talk about freeze frames as one of the things that Soderbergh probably has used in a lot of his movies. I feel like that was in Ocean's movies a lot.
It's in some Ocean's movies for sure, yeah.
It's a great thing here. It definitely helps that retro style. Between that and the retro soundtrack elements, there's something that where he, with just a few little elements like that, he creates a mood and a theme for the movie that just really all vibes together nicely.
Yeah, she gets this huge badass moment, and then immediately we get to see her in her most like feminine moment where she has this breathtakingly romantic scene with Foley at this hotel bar.
It's funny for dudes like us to have romantic moments take our breath away, and I called it in my notes one of the most romantic scenes ever put on film, but it really is.
Yeah.
It's, again, Soderbergh, he knows what he's doing. He's going through all these other emotions and vibes that we're talking about, and then when he's like, oh, let me show you that I know how to do romance. I mean, this is a great crime movie. It's full of twisty stuff. It's full of funny stuff. It's full of high-spirited hijinks. And then the whole movie elevates to another level. You're like, I didn't know it was a top-tier romance, too. Just the look and vibes of this scene where they meet and get together and the snow's falling in the window outside, it melts you. It hits you really hard on this romantic level that I didn't even know I was susceptible to.
Yeah, he really hides the ball. You think you're getting a heist crime comedy. You're actually getting a romance, and those other things are just peppered around the edges because this is the beating heart of the movie right here. And I understand why he was so particular about not just the actors having chemistry, but a certain type of chemistry, because the unbelievability of the situation doesn't work if the two characters are just not like magnetically attracted to each other. And they sell it so perfectly that you don't even question it.
No, it's so great and it's so dreamy, and the way that he avoids the pitfalls of which in modern times is a whole discourse about the current generation being unable to even look at sex scenes on screen. And this movie even sidesteps that kind of discomfort because it cuts their bedroom moments in as you're hearing them talk through their getting to know you moments. So it's happening in two time frames at once on screen, cutting back and forth. And both of them are visually dreamy and just so well done. And the drama that plays out wordlessly as the two of them are back in the hotel room and undressing and getting ready to hop in bed together is also really powerful without words, with the other words going on top of that. It's an amazing amount of stuff being communicated in a scene that just really elevates this movie.
And it's not telegraphed because we're thinking we might get another scene of Karen establishing she's tough as nails because she's getting hit on by these shit-ass businessmen who
That's right.
Super obnoxious. Although one of them, I was like, I know that fucking guy. Wayne, I think it's pronounced Pere, who is just, if you don't know who that is, you do know who that is. You just don't know it. In The Big Short, he's the guy that always comes in the room with Tracy Letts to yell at Michael Burry, like his attack dog. And we covered him in Free State of Jones. He was in that as kind of a shitbag. Okay. He always plays like an asshole. He's got the kind of face, I'm sorry. Like,
yeah,
he's got that face. But then, yeah, once Clooney shows up, it's obviously in retrospect, it's inevitable that he's going to show up. But like, you're taken off guard the first time you see him there.
And the contrast between him and those jerks at the bar is fantastic. And the contrast between her being this tough character that, like you said, we just seen her hit her toughest moment in the scene prior, and she has to fend off these guys. And then the way she reveals her girlishness, I think that's another genius of casting J-Lo, is that she plays both those extremes really well. And when she's feeling safe and cute around Foley, her voice gets a little high. Like she just sort of takes on some of those girlish mannerisms. It's really fun to see that contrast.
She probably learned it growing up in the Bronx. She's Jenny from the block.
That's all she was. I mean, she's still Jenny from the block.
Yeah, don't be fooled by the rocks that she's got. All right, you ready to take us home?
Here we go. Snoop and his guys enter the Ripley house first. They question and threaten an older woman named Midge, played by Nancy Allen, who says she's the housekeeper and that Mr. Ripley is out of town. They take Midge upstairs and they force her to help them open the safe in the bedroom closet, but it only contains Ripley's toupees. Meanwhile, Foley is searching the ground floor. He finds Ripley himself hiding in his study. Ripley tells him that Midge is actually his lover. He loves her and he won't flee to save himself while they're still holding her hostage. But Foley's already figured out that the raw diamonds are hidden in plain sight amongst the gravel in Ripley's fish tank. He has Buddy scoop out the gems and the pair get ready to leave, Snoop and the others behind. But at the last minute, Foley has second thoughts. He tells Buddy, take the diamonds and go, while he heads back inside the house, armed with a gun that he has very little idea how to use. Foley goes up the stairs to check on Midge, where Kenneth Kenneth tries to blast him with a shotgun. He returns fire, killing Kenneth. Then White Boy Bob catches Foley and forces him to drop his pistol, only to stumble coming up the steps and shoot himself dead with his own gun. Then Jack squares off with Snoop, but they both find themselves out of bullets. As Snoop goes to pick up another gun and Foley hides, Karen enters the scene and confronts Snoop, shooting him dead as he wheels on her. Realizing that he won't get past Karen and knowing he can't face the prospect of going back to jail, Jack prepares himself to force Karen to kill him instead. But knowing he wouldn't harm her, Karen stays cool, and she simply shoots Jack in the leg, then takes him into custody as the cops arrive on the scene. Much later, as Jack is being transported back to Glades Correctional, he realizes that Karen has volunteered to be the marshal who accompanies him, and she's arranged quite an interesting fellow prisoner for Jack to get acquainted with on the long drive down. It's a man named Hajira Henry, played by Samuel L. Jackson, a legendary escape artist who's broken out of prison no less than 9 times.
Talk about perfect cameo casting. Samuel L. Jackson in that final scene. I mean, we'll talk more about it, but I just had to call it out. The Ripley house, yeah, this is basically the whole third act of the movie is this heist. It covers every base. It's got laughs. It's got horrifying sights. It's got tension. It's got a little romance. And before, when I mentioned that there's some humor in even like the threat of rape in this section, what I mean is that Kenneth is wearing one of Ripley's toupees throughout the scene where he's, I don't know what you would say. He's like just menacing Midge.
He's menacing Midge, but they do get as far as he gets into the bed with her, and that's where he dies when Foley finds him there. He's
wearing another man's toupee.
She helps to subdue him. She throws a silk sheet over his head so that he can't see, and Jack can get a few shots off.
Yeah, we're not sad to see Kenneth go. He was not the nicest gentleman. Even White Boy Bob's death, the movie does a great job of setting that up. If you noticed, he falls constantly and slips constantly throughout his appearances.
He's real clumsy on his feet. He's stumbling as they walk across the street. He's stumbling. The first time he goes up the steps, there's plenty of setup in this movie too. By the time he slips on the steps, you don't expect him to shoot a gun up through his chin and out the top of his head, but like, you know that this guy's a klutz.
Foley's reaction is all of our reaction. He's just kind of standing there dumbfounded for a second before he gets back to it.
It's gross and brutal, but this is another one of the parts where even the most dramatic deaths like Kenneth and Noop's death are a little bit funny because the movie's done with scaring you. It feels good to get rid of the most menacing villains that have been troubling our heroes throughout, but it has an actual dark emotional moment for Jack before things work out okay.
Yeah, the kind of struggle he goes through about how he's going to handle this, because he did make a promise to her in the trunk of the car that he's not going to be an 80-year-old man in prison. He basically says, if I get caught again, I'm going to shoot my way out. And he tries, but can't quite pull it off. It was him too well by then.
It's very sad when you see him realizing that it's time to do that. And then on my second watch, I realized just how many clues they drop. Like he mentions Bonnie and Clyde in that trunk scene and says, that wouldn't be a bad way to go out. And there's other times where he's talking to Buddy and Buddy's like, you have a choice until they put a gun on you. And he's like, you still have a choice when they put the gun on you. Yeah. There's all these little clues that like he's psyching himself up to it's win or die trying. But what incredible irony. They've just come together and realized how good their relationship could be. And then his going out has to be with the woman of his dreams. He has to force her to do the suicide by cop, which is a pretty loaded situation.
And she's kind of there on her own time, it seems like. She's part of this task force, but nobody else from the task force is in Detroit. And I don't get the sense that she clued them in that she's up there. That puts her in kind of a, I would imagine, a sticky situation. She's going to have some splaining to do, more or less.
And it shows that when she wants to take Foley in, it's because she's sticking to her principles, right? She's not surrounded by other cops. No one would know what went on in that house because there's almost nobody left alive except
Foley and Ripley and Midge.
It's like she had a choice and she chose her principles, which is a nice statement about Karen's character, but it ends up with basically the most romantic shot in the leg that you can imagine in a film because you actually feel good when she shoots him in the leg and you're like, oh, it's going to work out for them.
But it also means until we meet Hajira that he's probably going to die in prison, but now we get a little sense that maybe there's more to his story.
She's figured a way out. But it does bring you back to, I mean, we said the hookup scene is so powerfully romantic and you're like, oh, this movie is more than a crime movie. It's a romance movie. And just that feeling of being on the staircase with them, the overarching vibe of that scene is the love story, right? Despite it being the climax and the conclusion of this convoluted crime heist thing with all these characters at odds, it's back to being a love story about the two of them, which was just really neat and why I think it elevates this movie above the genre.
And there's something to the motif of like snow with their love story because it's snowing heavily at the house when this happens, when this goes down at the hotel room. I mean, they're in Detroit. It could have been fucking August and it still would have been snowing probably, but it just feels like there's like a visual through line there that is nice to see. It's just like very thoughtful, detailed filmmaking. It's
an excellent movie. And I love that the ending scene is even more hopeful because you're right. She like saved his life because she loved him and she didn't let him commit suicide there. But it's kind of hopeless until they come up with this fun out when Sam Jackson shows up and basically is like going to teach teach him the ways of escaping from jail.
He knows some of the ways, but he's not a pro like Hajira, who's done it 9 times, which is
right.
a hilarious number of times to have escaped from prison. You think they would just put you in like a concrete 5x5 room or something eventually.
Yeah, he's becoming like a Marvel supervillain at that point. They have to come up with a way to contain him.
I have one qualm with your synopsis, though, here in this third act, because you lionize Ripley for sticking behind because he's worried for Midge. He doesn't do anything to help her, though. He's just downstairs being like, oh, no, they're fucking shooting Midge. This is terrible. And he doesn't like leap to her rescue. He's just chilling.
He's not great, but he's better than you think. He still stays in the moral middle. I admit, like, he's dubious throughout. Obviously, he's this convicted fraudster. And then in the middle of it, we didn't even talk about that part, but the reason Foley's pissed is when he got out of prison last time, he went straight to Ripley for...
Oh, yeah. We kept saying, like, you won't even know how this circles back to the rest of the movie until later. And then we just left it out.
We left it out. You got to watch it. But no, it circles back when he goes to Ripley's office because Ripley's promised him a job. He said, I could use a guy like you. And then he gives him a shitty security guard job. And Foley, as Ripley predicted, throws it in his face. And like they both have good arguments in that fight.
Yeah, Ripley's basically saying it's a chance to prove yourself if you can do this shitty job for a little while and apply yourself and show me. Because he makes a good point. You're a bank robber. That's not a marketable skill. I don't know what kind of job you'd be good at. Do this shitty job for a little while and I can get to know where you might fit better. And Foley tells him to go fuck himself, basically.
Yeah, because he cannot. His whole life is based on never being a regular schmo. He's so offended when he sees the Yoplait and Power Bar sitting on the desk of the hiring manager. Like this sort of office life is so offensive to him that it's literally like turning his stomach. But like Ripley's morally dubious. He made his money through privilege and fraud. And who's he to lecture Foley on hard work?
Right.
But he is human because you're right. He's not a hero. He doesn't go up and rescue Midge physically, but he has a chance to get out of there unscathed. And he's like, no, I'm not leaving the house. I love that woman and I can't go while they have her hostage.
Truthfully, if he did run to her rescue, not much is going to happen except they're going to take him hostage too.
Which they do.
He's not overpowering these men. There's 5 dudes,
right.
Hardened criminals in there with him. He's in a tough spot, I'll say.
Yeah.
I was just being silly. All right, that's out of sight. Do you want to catch up with some of these peeps?
Absolutely.
All right. So we did Soderbergh. We've already covered him with Logan Lucky, so we'll see what he's been up to since then. He's released some bangers. He did Magic Mike's Last Dance, Presents, and Black Bag. The only Presents turned a profit. And that probably has a lot to do with its $2 million budget. It was a very cheap movie to make.
Okay.
Pretty effective ghost story, though. Pretty cool. A ghost story from the perspective of the ghost.
Oh,
so I think it's like 83 minutes. You should check it out. It's not very scary, but it's good.
Yeah, it sounds cool.
His next movie, I think it's out now. I think it came out today. It's the black comedy, The Christophers. It stars Ian McKellen and Michaela Cole.
Wow.
Unfortunately, I will not be seeing it as it also stars James Corden, who I cannot abide.
Oh, yeah.
Stevie's making questionable decisions across the board lately. Let's say 2026 has not been his year. That's all he's got on the horizon. I mentioned the Spanish Civil War movie with Wagner Moura and the John Lennon and Yoko Ono documentary. So don't we know enough about the Beatles?
Kind of. I mean, I'm a Beatles fan, but even
4 fucking Beatles movies this year too, aren't we? Is it this year or next? I don't know.
It might be a little overkill.
Yeah.
I mean, Steven Soderbergh's like the weather. If you don't like what you're seeing from him right now, just wait 5 minutes and there'll be some more movies coming out.
Well said. Well said. All right. Written by Scott Frank. I did not realize this guy's he's one of our guys. I didn't connect that it's that Scott Frank, but
right.
Yeah, he's been writing since the late 80s. Some of his notable film credits did Get Shorty, so he was well versed in Elmore Leonard by now. Minority Report,
right.
Marley and Me, and Logan. Imagine having Marley and Me and Logan on your resume.
That's some extremes.
Talk about the range. But we've been big champions of him lately for some other stuff. He's been dominating the small screen, writing and directing. He did Godless, which we both were big fans of. Our boy Scoot was scooting.
Yeah, you clued me into Scoot and that whole show, which was killer.
He did The Queen's Gambit, which is a massive hit for Netflix. Huge hit. Monsieur Spade, which I'm not familiar with. I think it's another Netflix show. I think he's got like a overall deal with them.
That was that Clive Owen one that I watched some of it. It's a little dry, but it was good.
I like Clive Owen. Maybe I'll give it a chance. And Department Q, which we were both big fans of last year.
Yeah.
Coming back. It finally got renewed. It was in the precipice for a bit.
Yeah, he is just really one of my favorite writers in Hollywood. He's also an author of maybe only one novel called Shaker that I read that I think I talked about on the show before. Really cool contemporary noir crime story set in LA, kind of Elmore Leonard-ish. It's the kind of thing that I liked, and I bet you would like it if you gave him a chance.
I absolutely should, because that sounds right up my alley. I did want to mention, since we're talking about Elmore Leonard, I am kind of reading a modern day Leonard homage, I would say. Everybody Knows by Jordan Harper, which is a LA set contemporary crime movie set in the world of crisis PR in Hollywood. It's got some James Ellroy vibes, if James Ellroy wasn't a terrible racist.
Okay.
So yeah, definitely worth checking out for any listeners who are looking for a new novel to jump into. And also Ian, because I keep telling him.
I know.
I think you get a lot out of it.
You did tell me about that before.
It's very specific about LA neighborhoods. Yeah.
We should do an official trade of Shaker versus what was yours called?
Everybody knows. Yeah, let's do it. Let's have a book swap. We'll do a little.
Yeah, it's a little 2-man book club.
Yeah, I need somebody to keep me accountable, so I keep reading my books. So
Okay, I like that.
we did cover Clooney not too long ago with Tomorrowland, so we don't have to get super in depth. We'll just keep up on what's new, and that's not much.
Okay.
He starred in J. Kelly in 2025. It got good reviews, but seemed like maybe not the reviews they were hoping for. You could tell that they were reaching for the stars with that one, maybe an Oscar nom. And it got a couple, but not any real consideration for any of the big ones.
Yeah, I got about 40 minutes into that movie and I wasn't that into it.
It just seemed kind of masturbatory Hollywood stuff, which usually plays really well at the Oscars, but I think they've become self-aware.
Yeah, there was something just didn't click with that one.
And so after that, he is going to do Ocean's 14, which is announced, but without Soderbergh, he's not coming back for that one.
Oh, interesting.
The rumored director is David Leitch, who co-directed the first John Wick movie. Much more of an action director. He did Atomic Blonde, Deadpool 2, Hobbs and Shaw, Bullet Train. None of those movies, except for John Wick, I'm particularly fond of. But then he did The Fall Guy, which we both really liked.
Oh, yeah, that redeems him quite a bit.
And he's got another movie coming out in September called How to Rob a Bank. Sounds pretty cool. Action comedy heist. Maybe like an audition for the Ocean's movie, because it sounds very much like an Ocean's movie. It's got Nicholas Hoult, Pete Davidson, Zoe Kravitz, John C. Reilly. I'll probably check that out when it hits theaters.
That sounds fun.
Streaming.
So yeah, that Ocean's, I think maybe then depends on the writing. Is it like up to snuff to make it all work?
Yeah, I guess Soderbergh didn't want to make a successful movie. He's beyond all that now, so he's not doing that one.
Yeah.
This was another relatively early performance from Lopez, which we talked about. Now she's been one of the biggest stars in the world, and like stars in a broad sense, just a celebrity, not just an actor, not just a singer, not just a dancer, but a professional famous person. She's been in plenty of bombs. She was in Geely, Jersey Girl, Border Town, U-Turn. Stay tuned for U-Turn. I might have to cover that one day.
Okay.
Parker. But she's also done some solid work in films like The Cell, which I'm a big fan of, and Hustlers.
Yeah.
She's got 3 movies coming out. She's going to be in The Godmother, The Last Mrs. Parrish, and Office Romance. So she's staying busy.
Is she going back to those like cheesy rom-coms?
I think it actually is like a straightforward romance. Yeah. Let's see. American romantic comedy film with Brett Goldstein from The Soccer Show.
I love Brett Goldstein. I didn't watch the show.
He's a comedian though, right? He does Ted Lasso.
From Ted Lasso. Yeah. I didn't watch Ted Lasso, but I saw Brett Goldstein in another rom-com/romantic drama with our girl Imogen Poots. He's quite good as like a romantic leading man.
Nice. Yeah. And our other girl, Betty Gilpin's in Office Romance, so maybe it's got a shot at being halfway decent with that cast.
Sounds great.
Let's talk about Ving Rhames. We didn't talk too much about Buddy in the episode, but he's a very important part of the movie, and Ving Rhames does a great job as a warm, brotherly figure to Jack, except he keeps getting them in trouble because he keeps calling his sister and telling her about the terrible things they do, and she calls the cops on him.
Yeah.
But he's been working for a long time. His first gig was in 1985. I did not realize how many huge movies he's been in, but here's some of his important roles. Pulp Fiction, Con Air, Entrapment, Final Fantasy, The Spirits Within, which we covered in a previous episode.
That's
Baby
right.
Boy, and the Mission Impossible franchise. And I believe he's the only cast member to be in every Mission Impossible movie except for Tom Cruise.
Wow. Quite an achievement.
That cast has almost done a complete turnover since the early movies except for him and Tom Cruise. There's nobody left as far as I can remember.
He's like the SNL cast member that hangs on for 20 years.
Wow. Shade at Kenan Thompson.
He's the Kenan Thompson of the MI franchise.
He is. He's also done some TV work. He was in Legacy and Dope Thief. Dope Thief, a show I was very excited about that ultimately was a disappointment.
Oh, I remember hearing about it from you.
But he'll next star in action thriller The Mongoose alongside Liam Neeson, Marissa Tomei, and Michael Chiklis. Interesting cast there.
Yeah, that's an old cast for an action thriller.
Yeah, it's going to take place at the retirement home. It's going to be like Bubba Hotep. It's a backdoor sequel to Bubba Hotep. Let's talk about Cheadle a little bit. He also started in the mid-'80s, appearing in movies like The Meteor Man, previous episode.
Right.
Devil in a Blue Dress. Hold on.
So good in that.
I just got to double check if Devil in a Blue Dress made money, because if it didn't, it's absolutely going on the little schedule.
Hell yes.
No, it didn't. It cost $22 million and it made $22 million. So we're covering that bitch.
Cue up Devil in a Blue Dress. That's a formative movie for me.
I really love that movie.
For me, recognizing Denzel and Don Cheadle and the fact that I loved noir. Like it started a lot of things in me.
That's very exciting. I can't wait to watch it again. I watched it like last year and loved it still. Yeah, he steals the show as Mouse Alexander and Devil in a Blue Dress. He was also in Volcano and Boogie Nights. So little PTA crossover there. And he's been a frequent collaborator of Soderbergh's. He was starred in Traffic, all the Ocean's movies, of course, and No Sudden Move, which was one of my favorite movies of the 2020s. He's also had significant roles in movies like Crash, Hotel Rwanda, Hotel for Dogs, and Flight. Those movies are not related. Hotel Rwanda and Hotel for Dogs, very different vibes. He joined the MCU in Iron Man 2, replacing Terrence Howard as James Rhodey Rhodes, and he'll next appear in Boots Riley's I Love Boosters.
Cool. I'm looking forward to that.
I don't love Boots Riley's I Love Boosters. It's hard.
It's hard to say.
It's a little tricky. It's a little tricky on the tongue. So now that we've gotten the episode out of the way, this is where I tell the listeners what we're covering next. And this is a movie that you requested, and I think you forgot you requested.
Oh, cool. I feel special that you remembered for me and are bringing it around.
I saw it on the list, and I was like, what the fuck is that? So I looked it up, and then I searched our chat history, and I found it. So we're doing, let me just pull it up so I can give people some backstory on it, because I have a feeling nobody's seen it. We are doing LADYHAWKE.
Oh, yeah.
A 1985 fantasy, medieval fantasy film. Richard Donner, our first Richard Donner movie. That's exciting.
Cool.
Starring Matthew Broderick, Rutger Hauer, and Michelle Pfeiffer.
That was an early cable TV staple. That movie takes me right back to my junior high friends' family room where they had a TV with it was a interesting clash of technologies. It had one of those newfangled cable boxes on it that not everybody had, but instead of a electronic on-off remote control, it had the Whistler. You ever run into one of those?
No.
It's like the clapper. It had a plug in the wall that was like noise sensitive, but it was basically like, it looked like a clicker, but it was more like a chew toy that you would squeeze it and the air would rush out and whistle, and that would turn the TV on and off.
What's the functional benefit of that over just a regular remote?
It's for a TV that didn't have remote control built in, so you could add this wall plug control. But let's not let that reflect on LADYHAWKE, which was It involves no whistlers or the clapper or any kind of humorous aging technology of the 80s. This might have been a little bit past that time, but anyway.
1985, yeah, so now you're dead
on.
Okay.
Oh, no, that is the right time. And a favorite, I was a kid. I loved any kind of thing where guys had swords and wore armor, and so I was thrilled to see this movie.
Is this a serious movie, or is it?
I think the Matthew Broderick character as the young squire brings a little comedy to it, but I think it's like a fantasy romance kind of thing.
Okay. This is a rare opportunity for me to go into a movie like completely blind, not only never having seen a movie, but never really even having heard of it until you asked me about it. I'm going in completely dark, but if listeners want to get ahead of the curve and watch the movie, it's free on Tubi, so you can check it out there. Otherwise, we always do our best to explain the movies to you so you don't have to miss out on anything. Yeah,
this will be one of those for a lot of people, but I'm looking forward to watching it again.
Sometimes we got to do one for us. It's the old adage, right? One for us, one for them.
Worked out great for Coppola.
I don't know. He keeps selling parts of his wineries. Megalopolis has destroyed him. He's ruined. Well, thank you guys so much for listening. Reminder, you can subscribe, follow, rate us, review us on your podcast platform of choice. We would appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Helps new listeners find us. You can also follow us on Twitter at BlastZonePod and on Blue Sky. You can email us, blastzonepod@gmail.com. If you have any questions, feedback, movie suggestions, or just want to chat about movies.
We love hearing from you.
Truly. And see you next time in the Blast Zone.
See you next time in the Blast Zone.
The Blast Zone.
Motherfucker.